I go straight from the bank, gassing up the tank, cranking up the radio, playing old Hank. It ain't that long till I'm back at the pond. I'm pulling up the truck down at the dock. It's time to do some cruising, baby, get a little stuck. It's a Saturday joyride, Percy Beast is the spot to take the blues away. We're on a boat, we're feeling fine, drinking Tennessee whiskey, a big blue sky. We're going up, we're coming down. There's a party on the water, it's a hell of a time. We're on a boat, we're killing time, in our own honky tonk with a bottle of wine. We're going up, we're coming down. Cheers to feeling alright, it's a hell of a time. A hell of a time. Yeah, we're chilling out here, ladies in the rear, our feet in the water, our top disappears, drinking Malibu Patron or a beer in a cup.
Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to discuss waterfall photography techniques and the gear required for it. Now there is Slippery Rock Creek down over the hill, then over here to our right is Breakneck Falls. That's where we're going to be practicing at and talking about the specifics of waterfall photography. But I figured we'll hide over here for a second and we're going to discuss what kind of equipment you should look into whenever it comes to waterfall photography. Now the first thing you should consider is look up the weather before you go. If you have a location, an idea for where you want to go shoot a waterfall or where the waterfall is. And if you don't really know of any waterfalls near you, you could literally just go on like Google Maps, type in waterfalls. A lot of people have put pins where they're at so you can find them a lot easier. It's a 50-50, that means there's probably going to be a lot of people there on a weekend, but also easier for you to find something to practice. Now you can also search on Instagram for your local area if you want to. You can go in the maps portion on Instagram and see what people post on there too, if you'd prefer that. But either way, there's going to be pictures involved that other people have taken, so you can get a general idea of what you're going to be tackling. But one thing to keep in mind is it doesn't show you the terrain you're going to have to go through to get to it. So that brings us to our first topic. What clothing are you going to wear? Obviously dress for the season. Right now it's like 35 degrees out, it's pretty chilly. But I hiked up here carrying all this stuff, so I'm pretty hot and steamy and sweaty. So that's why you should dress in layers. That way you can unzip and cool off. Any moisture on your skin from sweating is going to make you even colder than you really would be. Think about your hiking shoes. Everyone that does landscape or even wildlife photography should have a pair of dedicated hiking shoes, or in this case for waterfalls, I really suggest, if you can see that, I'm not that young anymore, some knee-high rubber boots. Mine are insulated, but even in the summertime, insulation doesn't make you too hot as long as it's not 100 degrees outside. So then moving on to the next topic, whenever it comes to equipment, always have a nice backpack to carry all your stuff in. It makes hiking worlds easier so it's not swaying around your back. Make sure you have a backpack that has a hip belt on it and at least a chest clip to keep it from flying around when you're climbing over rocks or crossing creeks. And the reason why I suggest rubber knee-high boots is so that whenever you go do waterfalls, well, you're going to be next to water, and sometimes you got to stand in the water, next to water, get across a creek to get to it. And it just makes it so much safer than trying to hop, skip, and jump across little rocks as pedestals across creeks. It lowers your chance of falling and getting hurt. Just walk through the water, be safer about it. And then the other important thing you need to consider is a tripod. Now this is a pretty junky tripod. $60 tripod, Manfrotto Action Compact Sport. I think that's what it's called. I've had it for a long time. Did a review on this if you want to check it out. It's only 60 bucks, but it's pretty much just for very light cameras like entry cameras, D3400s, 3500s, Z50s with a kit lens. It's really not meant for anything more than like 2 or 3 pounds. So I really recommend at least spending at least $100, $150 on a okay tripod. $200 I think is where most people should spend their stuff at. So let's get into the other stuff you're gonna want to think about, especially if it's going to be a bright sunny day. You're going to at least want an ND filter. This is a variable ND filter. You will most likely just be okay with a CPL filter. They cut the light a little bit. They're not that dark usually. This is an Amazon Basics one. It's nothing crazy. And whenever it comes to filters, I would buy the biggest filter you need. So all my lenses that I would use a filter on are smaller than an 82mm filter thread. So then I buy all 82mm circular filters. That way, whenever you get your filter, you can just use step up or step down rings to put them on any lens you need to, and a set of these is like 10-15 bucks. That way you can use your one filter on almost all of your lenses, and it just reduces a lot of the cost so that you could use your 82mm on a 24-70, which is what I'm using right now, or a 70-200, or really anything in between that has a 82 or smaller filter thread. And whenever it comes to the lenses, you can consider really anything from like 16 to maybe 70mm, depending on what kind of waterfall you're going to take. And at worst case, if you don't have a super wide lens, say like if you're stuck with a 40mm like this one, you can just take a whole bunch of pictures. Like if you envision the frame that you want to take, but mentally cut up into different images going across the top and going across the bottom, then you just move your camera left and right a little bit to take the image. And then whenever you get home and you can edit and post, all you have to do is stitch those images together in a panorama, and you have one giant wide high megapixel image. Now if you're interested in a tutorial of doing that, there's a little pop-up up here. I did this a while ago, and I'm pretty sure off the top of my head it's the same waterfall as we're going to go shoot here in a minute, but it kind of takes you step by step of stitching together in Lightroom Classic. And then whenever it comes to your camera, really any digital camera or film camera can obviously do this. Just make sure you have a lens that fits it. I suggest everyone to at least have a camera that shoots in shutter priority or full manual. Now, if you have an old SLR like this AE1, obviously this will do it. You can do full manual on it. You can do shutter priority on it. Works really good. So if you don't have this, you don't have a regular digital camera, a DSLR, a film camera, you need a tripod with like a little C-clamp on top of it so that you can use your cell phone and then shoot in manual control, and just generally set the settings to what we're about to do over here at the waterfall on your phone. You get pretty decent results with it. It might not be the world's best, but it's a good way to start out learning. Okay, so let's pack up all this stuff, pack up the camera, and we're going to go over there and shoot some waterfalls.
Party on the water, it's a hell of a time. We're on a boat, we're killing time. In our own honky tonk with a bottle of wine. We're going up, we're coming down. Cheers to feeling alright. It's a hell of a time. A hell of a time. It's a hell of a time. Oh, hell of a time.
So, here we are at the waterfall. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Seems to be raging pretty good. Whenever I was checking the weather before we started this whole trip, looked like we had a couple days of rain in this area, so glad it pretty filled it up. So, as we walk over here, you can really tell what size this is, how big the waterfall is. It's probably about 30 feet, 10 meters. Got a couple different cascades on it. So let's get set up with the secondary camera, and I can show you what to do in the main camera for the camera settings. Okay, so here we are, we're set up with the waterfall. We got the main camera over here on the main good tripod, the Gitzo, and we got our bag set up. Now the first thing you want to do is make sure you're not like shooting into the sun. If anything on the waterfall has any bright white spots on your camera, or even while you're looking at it, then you try and do a long exposure, it's going to be so blown out and overexposed in that one spot and ruin your picture. So the best thing to do is shoot in the shadow, which we're lucky to have for the moment right now, or on overcast days. Now I did, as I mentioned, looked up the weather. It said it's supposed to be rainy and overcast today. That's why we picked today to do this. And well, It is literally blue skies, not a cloud to be seen, and the sun is rising directly behind the waterfall we're about to shoot. So we're gonna try and make this as quick as possible. And the other thing you need to do is, kind of hard to do because I'm trying to rush and beat the sun here, but when you get to your location, take a minute, stand around, look where you want your image to be. You want your waterfall to come down over some steps if it has it, and then kind of meander through your picture, give you leading lines for your image. That way, whenever you do your image, it'll pull people into it and it gives something more to look at than just for a few seconds. That way, once they look at it for 10, 15, 20 seconds, they'll start seeing more details in different spots as they follow the flow of water through the image. So I kind of think what I'm going to do is, there's a bunch of leaves right here. I'm going to take some of the leaves out, throw them off to the side. There's some sticks and buildup of like driftwood and everything. I'm going to take those out of the way. And I think the main image is going to be right here with the waterfall a little bit to the right, with the water itself kind of meandering to the left, forming a little creek. That's the fun thing about landscape and waterfall photography. You have to be creative with what you have. You can't just, ask the waterfall to move somewhere else or move the sun and give you different lighting. You're given with what you got, and you got to make it work. And obviously while I'm doing this, only move dead debris, dead trees, limbs if you have to. Don't be going out here and cutting down living plants to make your image better. That ain't cool. Let's get the tripod and camera set up. And also, this is where it comes in handy to have a tall tripod. This Gitzo is a hiking tripod. It is not super long. Honestly, I probably should have brought my Benro. My Benro tripod. It's aluminum. I don't have to worry as much about being scratched up. It's not end of the world for it. This thing being carbon fiber and very expensive kind of makes me grit my teeth a little. And also the thing on top, the monitor, since we're just doing photo, we don't need that. Okay, now that we got second camera set up, since it's not a very bright day, we don't need the ND filters, so we're just going to go with the CPL filter. So first thing, when you go to put your ringed filter on, put the filter on the rings first. Okay, ready to go on that. For most lenses, you won't be able to put your lens hood on with the filter. So one thing that I legit almost forgot to mention is with CPL filters, they rotate on the front. Now to polarize the light coming off of something to remove reflections and give you a better waterfall image, you have to aim your camera at the waterfall you normally would, and then rotate the front element of the filter, and you'll be able to see those reflections disappear. That's the setting you want whenever you go and take your waterfall pictures. So we'll just give you an example of that real quick. So as you can see, there's like reflections and junk on top of the water right here. So if we rotate this, they disappear and you can see right through the water. Now how freaking cool is that? Now we'll set up the Z cam so you can see what the camera's seeing. Okay, now we'll be able to see the settings that we're doing on the camera. So for waterfall photography, you kind of want to stick to about half a second to about 5 seconds for your exposure. Anything more than that is just diminishing returns if you want the frothy, cloudy, smoky look for the water. So this lens only opens to f4. We'll reduce the ISO to base ISO of 64. Whatever base ISO you have for your camera, make sure it's at that. And then also open your lens as wide as possible to let as much light in. And then we're just going to reduce the shutter until we get we'll say, we'll go with 2-second exposure. And some cameras will have a green horizontal level line. So on your camera, if you have a Nikon, I'm not sure about the other ones, I've never shot anything else for the most part. If you hit the display button on your camera, it'll cycle through different displays on it, and it should come out with a level on it. If not, you might have to dig through the settings. And if you're unlucky enough to where your camera doesn't have a level in it, just use the bubble level on your tripod. That's another reason why you spend a little bit more money on tripod. It's got quality of life features you're really going to want. So, as you can see, that photo is very overexposed. So then this is where you go to the second step. Just slowly stop down your aperture until you get a properly exposed image. And keep an eye on your light meter in your camera. Just put it right there. Well, right there, that's perfect exposure. Now, I want to go a stop under that. So we'll just go right there. We'll call that good. It really helps to know your camera at this point though, so you know how much underexpose an image you can do and still get nice quality images out of it without bringing the noise level up with your editing and post. And again, you need to be trying to shoot this on your camera in RAW. We're about f13. Now the higher the f-stop, the more in focus you're going to have in your image. I personally wouldn't go above f16, 17 on a full frame camera, or like f13 or 14 on a crop camera. But if you're lucky enough to have a medium format camera, you know, f25, f30, perfectly fine. You don't want to put too much aberrations or problems in your image. Okay, so we have our exposure right, we have the aperture and ISO correct, and we have a properly exposed image. Now what you need to do is make sure that you set your camera to single shot. I need to go on your lens if it's an older camera, or if it's a newer mirrorless, you have to go into the menu system, turn off image stabilization. You don't want that, it'll cause extra jitter than you need. Single focus. That way when you press the shutter once, it focuses once and it doesn't refocus once the image is taken. Then you have to go into your custom settings here on the timers and AE lock, self timer, set your timer to, let's say 5 seconds, or 2 seconds. We'll just do 2 seconds. And we'll just do one shot. Now when your camera is in the timer mode, it's going to take 2 seconds and it'll take the picture. That way, whenever you take and hit the shutter button, there's no extra vibration from your hands touching the camera. And 2 seconds. Noise reduction is normal. You want to have that on. That way it'll remove any noise put in it from like hot pixels and stuff. And one thing to remember is whenever you use noise reduction on at least a Nikon, if you take, for whatever instance, a 10-minute exposure for long exposure photography, that noise reduction is going to take 10 minutes on top of the 10-minute exposure. So each frame is going to be 20 minutes of you sitting there waiting. So as you can see, I'm at 24 millimeters. It doesn't quite take into context everything that I want. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to do some photo stitching later on. So it's not quite down far enough. There we go. We'll call that. So real quick, I'm just going to take probably 10 pictures of the whole scene, and then in post, when we go to edit together, we'll just throw it all together as a panorama, call it good. Then we'll edit that as a raw file. And again, I am using a ball head. That way we can recompose and not worry about having a perfectly level tripod. And real quick, I'll do a vertical shot like this too, because sometimes whenever you take just normal horizontal photos and you stitch it together, it gives you like a weird bullfish look whenever you go to edit it. So it's always best to also shoot a vertical set as well while you're on location. That way, if it doesn't work out the first time, you at least have a backup. Always take more pictures at landscapes and waterfalls than you think you really need, because some of them you think are going to be great, they just turn out like hot garbage. It's almost cheating being able to just tap the screen where you want the camera to focus on the Z9 And then the timer starts, it takes this photo, and then you just got to recompose without touching the shutter button too. That's kind of nice. So we took about 9 photos, portrait and landscape, so we could stitch it together in post as a panorama, all in RAW. And real quick, just to prove a point, we're going to take some photos on the phone in RAW on manual to see how that works out. To record the screen on the phone here for the camera, we're going to use AZ Screen Recorder on the Android app, and obviously iPhone has their own version of built-in screen recording. This isn't really a comparison of smartphones and $6,000 cameras, but it's really just to show that you can do this kind of work on pretty much any camera that you get your hands on. We're going to go into more. We're going to go into Pro Photo right here. And we're going to do manual focus. Now, the cameras on phones, at least on my Samsung S20 FE, that has focus peaking, as you can tell. Okay, we'll do that. Shutter speed, we'll do, I don't know, we'll do half a second. ISO, we'll bottom that out. White balance. You want your white balance to be about 5600 to 6K generally. So we can't really control the aperture, but we have 180 shutter speed, ISO 50, manual focus. So we're going to take a picture right here. Take a picture there. Then whenever you go to review your images, it'll say RAW in the top right. So let's go back to the camera. And we'll just kind of move over. We're going to get another shot right here. Same thing. Go back to your manual focus. Make sure you're focused on the rocks. Like that. Got your photo. We'll do the next bottom two. Kind of hard to see when it's this far up. Okay, that's photo number 3. As you can tell, the white spots in the waterfall itself on the screen, that's going to be pretty hard to avoid on a phone. You can't really put filters on there. And the filters you can get for it, they're not anything to write home about. So when someone says, oh, my cell phone could do that, well, I'm sure it probably could do something of it, but it's certainly not going to be to the quality of even a $400 camera kit. Now that we've completed here and got some sample photos, we're gonna hike back to the truck, throw it in the laptop, and see what we got. So here we are at the end. We're gonna load up some pictures on the laptop and LRC and see what we got. And I always suggest everyone to have a card reader, especially on these big files. Okay, so here we are, about to load it in. Plug it in, see what we got. So I'm pretty sure I'm only gonna use the last couple, these ones. So we'll just highlight those. Then you can go right click and go to Photo Merge and click Panorama. It'll do its thing and bring it up, and we'll see how crazy fishbowl it looks. Look at that. Look at that. Rookie mistake. Always take more photos when you're doing panoramas than you think you actually need. Always go overboard. Because as you can see in the bottom left, I totally forgot that portion. So let's do cylindrical, see how that looks. Perspective just doesn't even want to merge anything. Then if you want, you can click on warp boundary, and it can kind of stretch it a little bit. You can kind of cheat the system a little, shall we say. and then click auto crop, and it'll kind of cut it out so you get the most out of your images. We'll just click merge on that, and then we'll do the other one, the one I shot landscape instead of portrait, and see how that one turned out. I think we're just gonna throw all these into one. What is this? 7 images. Edit in. No, not edit in. Photo merge. Do panorama. Hopefully this one turns out a little bit better. And since each one of these images are 45 megapixels, the Mac M1 kind of takes some time doing it. Okay, let's turn off auto crop and see how that looks. See, this is what I originally wanted to do for the portrait style images that I took, so we'll just boundary warp that a little bit. Okay, we'll try cylindrical. Ugh, that looks awful. Don't do that. Yeah, perspective still doesn't want to merge anything. So we'll go with that. We'll do auto crop. And if you want, see how this tree down here is bent? Not a fan of that. What do we do all the way? Yeah, it looks terrible. We'll just try and crop that out a little, I guess. I don't know. Maybe people won't notice. Probably will. So we'll do auto crop. And if you want, you can do auto settings. It basically gives you an edit on it already, but you don't have to do that. I usually don't. I don't like doing it myself. So we'll just merge that into a stitch. And while it's doing that, we're going to try. Okay, so this is all the the waterfall pictures. We'll import those. So here's what we got off the phone. Definitely not the same detail we got out of the camera, but we're gonna do our best. It's not that I don't like phone photography. It's just like the amount of money people spend on phones. Like, I don't know, new iPhone comes out, someone drops $1,200 on it, and then like they complain that they don't have any money for like a proper camera. It's like, you don't have to spend $1,200 on an iPhone. You can get the lower end of the same brand new series for a lot less, or even the previous generation for way less, and then take your $500 savings and go buy a camera that's going to blow your phone out of the water. So that's kind of why I don't like it. So here we go. Spherical, we'll do cylindrical. Perspective, still don't like it. We'll just do spherical. That's fine. Auto crop, merge. So here we have the final image from the stitched frames from the cell phone. I can't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but it's the Samsung S20 FE. I've had it for like 2 years, almost 3. So we'll mark that as a 2. And we'll go today's date. And the catalog, we'll go to the number 2 filter. Okay, so now we have, this is the cell phone, and this is the camera. So we're gonna edit the phone here real quick. And we're just gonna lower this exposure a tad. We're gonna drop the highlights best we can. It's kind of hard to do though. It's still a phone. Here we go. We'll bring up the temperature a little. Get the highlights, kind of crush those down a little, because as you can see, this is real white. Not a lot of details there. We'll bring down the blacks. And yeah, see, you got some reflections here. If you would have had a CPL filter on a cell phone, that might have helped. But filters on phones are kind of overpriced for what they give you. We'll fake some sharpness by increasing the texture. Get a little dehaze in there, a little clarity, because it was kind of foggy today. So honestly, for a cell phone, that's honestly like pretty freaking great. Now I'm not going to start shooting everything I have on a cell phone just because this looks nice. But yeah, it's actually not too bad, you know. And it is fall right now, and I was hoping we'd have some snow on the ground for this. Maybe some ice on the waterfall, something to add a little bit extra, but so far we haven't been so lucky. Try to get some of the blue out of the water because it was a pretty bright day. Now you see up here, this is where the phone lost a lot of detail, is in the trees up here because of the sunlight coming over top. Okay, so let's go to the camera. A lot more detail in the trees compared to what you got with the cell phone. I guess we could just do this, huh? Yeah, like this is an extreme example, but it is a very large image. It was stitched together. But you can see how much data we don't have on the bridge above the falls. The trees got some ridiculous aberrations going on around them. There's no details. The sun like blew out all the highlights, even though this is shot in RAW. Then on the camera, it's pretty much, you got everything you need. We'll work our highlights here a little bit. Raise those blacks. We should have just done this. Just not that. Bring up the whole exposure. Then let's go over here and lower the shadows. Lower those highlights. Get the blacks down. Okay, let's mess with the white balance. There. Got the texture. A little bit of clarity because it was foggy. Pretty chilly. And then we got, what is this? Oh yeah, highlights. Duh. There we go. See, this is why you would want a camera instead of a cell phone, especially if you're thinking about doing some like large prints and you want to keep a lot of detail. So like recently I printed a 24 by 36 for our living room off the Z9 from a stitched photo like this, and there is just no way you'd be able to get those kind of details up close on the print using a cell phone. Okay, so generally we get the same kind of colors out of both, so we'll just do this. Let's look at the water. Oh, not that close, my goodness. Let's do 100%. There we go, keep it even. Then this one, there we go. Okay. So the right is the Z9, the left is the phone. And as you can see, the Z9 really kept the details in the rocks in comparison. But I'll be honest, like that's a lot closer than I thought it would be. Kind of feel dumb trying to eat my words there. But in the small things, like up here in the trees, you're not going to have the detail on a cell phone, or like on the lichen down here. Not even really a fair comparison on that. And to think about this, the phone was like $1,000 when it was first released. It was pretty up there. It was like $800 to $1,000. Now I know we're comparing a Z9 to a cell phone, but the generalist here is pretty much all phones are going to perform like this. They have a very small sensor. They don't have a lot of dynamic range. So let's do a little bit extra pizzazz on here. Let's try like a film simulation. Let's see how that would look. So I have been using Dehancer for Lightroom. So we'll just open that in the Dehancer thing. We'll go edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. Open it up. It's a very large image, so I'm sure it's going to take a minute. Okay, so here we go as it loads slowly. So on the left, this is the before, this is after with that film simulation. Adds a little bit of grain to it. I just like the colors that it gives. So yeah, honestly, even with a phone, as long as you do like a panorama stitch, you can get some decent details out of it with the phone. But just remember, there's not a lot of dynamic range, so you will suffer in overblown spots like that. And even, but yeah, that's really about it. I say that after it's probably been a 45-minute video. That's about it when it comes to waterfall photography. And the last rule of thumb I got to give is make sure you tell someone where you're going, so that if something happens to you, they know where you're at and they can come help you or get someone to come rescue you if you get hurt or injured. And just don't go off on your own and don't tell anyone where you're at. That's the number one rule. And be safe about it. Be slow if you're climbing over rocks and stuff. I know it can get exciting whenever you say, oh, you know, there's a waterfall, it's right there, I can hear it, and you start getting antsy and you start half running, carrying all your stuff. Just slow yourself down and don't be in a rush. You don't want to get hurt in the middle of the woods. If you've enjoyed the video and you've learned something, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button, maybe that bell notification so you can hear every time that I get a video out. And let me know what you think down below in the comments if this has helped you at all. Opened your eyes a little bit, especially if you're starting to get into photography and you don't have a camera, and obviously you can use a newer cell phone to at least do a little bit of landscape work if you don't have any super crazy lighting situations going on. And if you've done a lot of waterfall and landscape photography and I missed something that you feel is super important, please let me know down below, especially if there's something you want me to do more in depth on. But until next time, happy shooting waterfalls out there. Get out there in the woods. It'll make you feel so much better about life. You'll go home feeling a lot more relaxed and more tolerable. Until then, I'll see you.